I'm delighted to treat you all to Scott Galloway. Scott is, let's see, he's a NYU professor. He's the founder and chairman of L2. If you don't know what L2 is, it's an incredible research organization that basically owns the currency of brands and how digitally savvy they are. They index them all. It's an incredible deep research. In fact, Scott he's such a pleasure. You're about to enjoy this. Not only is his work deeply researched, well articulated, but he's also a man after my heart. Is a bit of a ham. Yes, he did dress up as Adele and lip sync. So one never knows what you're going to get. With that, I welcome Scott Galloway.
Thanks, Harry. It's great to be here. My name's Scott Galloway. I teach at NYU, and I work for a firm called L2. And just for a boost of confidence, Terry reminded me about 10 seconds ago that I am wearing two colored shoes. And if you look at your own perception, if you're looking at me as a professor, you think, oh, isn't that funny? And you feel endeared towards an absent-minded professor. Whereas if you're looking at me as the guy who runs a venture-backed startup, you think, oh, he probably drank himself to sleep last night. The answer is yes. So we do three things. I'm going to spare you the ad on L2 and bust right into it, but we've aggregated more data on a brand's digital competence than any firm in the world, and we sit down with them and we tell them where they're strong and weak relative to their peer group. And in the course of that, we like to think of ourselves as train spotters, and we see trends where brands are investing, divesting. And if you think of the Final Four as taking the 64 best basketball teams, and the analogy is the 64 best companies in the world, our observation is it's always the same Final Four. When you're talking about profitability and influence, it's always Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google. And last year, I made this bold prediction that Amazon would decline in value. I think the future is about omni-channel. I do think Amazon's going to open stores, and laid out this huge case for why Amazon was going to decrease in value. And by the way, if you want to be invited to every retail boardroom in America within 30 days, just be critical of Amazon. So this is where I made my bold statement, and this is what happened to the stock price. Says the guy wearing two color shoes. So the first observation is we get it all wrong, get it wrong all the time. I hope a lot of this is right, but I know some of it is wrong, and I believe that predicting is important, just as Eisenhower said that plans are useless, but planning is invaluable. I think predictions are useless, but predicting is valuable because it forces you to think through the issues. So let's bust right into it. These companies have a combined market cap of about 1.3 trillion as of last year. They've grown it to about 1.7. That's the GDP of Canada. Yes, I know that's apples to oranges, but it's a good comparison, so I'm going to stick with it. If you start thinking about the GDP of Canada spread across the number of employees, the combined population of these companies in terms of employees is the Lower East Side and Gramercy Park, producing the economic value of Canada. Again, my analogy. The GDP of these companies adds up to most of Central and Northern Europe, or the market cap, excuse me, and if you add in Alibaba, you get the GDP of Russia. And I believe these companies are more powerful and more influential than any of the countries that we've mentioned, regardless of their media attention or the fact that they get together and talk about very important issues. So in sum, it's Larry's, Jeff, Tim's, and Mark's world. We just search, shop, text, and post in it. Now, why are these companies so successful? I think they tap into something very deep and very natural. First off, as we evolve as a species, we're the only species that has a difficult time wrapping our head around the anxiety of modern man, right? How can someone as awesome as me die? How can space end? Why don't I have a jet or a fragrance named after me? These are huge questions that Alain de Botton accurately calls first world issues. And we suffer from tremendous anxiety and depression because we anchor off the unknown and things we can't answer. So we fill this void with an invisible friend, a super being, and the majority of the world for the majority of time has had some sort of God that they pray to. And as we get more educated and more evolved, God starts taking a fall. If you have less than a high school education, you're about 20% more likely to believe in a hardcore or be hardcore religious. And as we become wealthier and more educated, our societies become less religious, but we still have a need to fill that void of unanswerable questions. Will my kid be all right? What's the relationship we all have with this super being? We send information up to somebody, we hope it gets processed in a divine way that we do not understand, and it sends back better information that gives us confidence. Will my kid be all right? Now we go to Google and we type in symptoms and treatment of croup, and it sends back an answer. 1 in 5 questions posed to Google, 1 in 5 have never been asked before. What figure, what priest, what organization has the credibility that people are willing to say 20% of the questions I'm going to pose to you have never been asked before? Google is a modern man's God. The market cap is extraordinary. You have to add up a bunch of ad-supported companies to get to the market cap of Google. How do they get to $1 trillion? I'm going to talk about this through all 4. The instinct, some facts on them, and how I think they get to $1 trillion. With Google, I think it's extension. Probably the greatest concentration of IQ in history. Only 2 of the companies make any money, so they are trying to get into something else that makes all the sense in the world. So the question is, what's next for them? There's a disruption index. It's pretty easy to figure out, and that is how fast does the sector raise prices above inflation without an underlying increase in product innovation. And if you look at cable as an example, your cable bill's doubled, your DVR is about the same, the TV experience is mostly the same. So in steps a bunch of players who say we're coming after that $70 billion carcass, and that number you referenced, Terry, where the upfronts have gone up, that last gasp that a lot of people have right before they die, I think that's what happened with the upfronts here. I think we are about to go into a serious leg down with television. Why? Advertising has become the tax that poor people pay. Advertising sucks, and just as we become numb to mass shootings in America, we become numb to how badly advertising sucks. If I were to look at the targeting of television from last night, I'm in the market for a Samsung phone, a Kia, a light beer, or I am bipolar or have restless leg syndrome. I have been working out 3 times a week since the age of 17. I'm now at an age where I can no longer do impact working out, so I've started to swim. Watching TV or any ad-supported media is like swimming, and every 11 minutes someone takes a dump in the pool. Advertising is awful. And if you make your living off the advertising industrial complex, you should start thinking about another career. Advertising is becoming a tax that poor people or technologically illiterate people pay. If you're like me, you go to iTunes and you pay $1.99 instead of ABC On Demand so you can avoid the ads when you watch Modern Family. Ad blockers, the wealthy, the young are all figuring out a way to go to media without paying in the form of advertising. So what is the industry most ripe for disruption that I believe Google will go into next to try and justify their lofty valuation? There's one industry that's raised prices faster than healthcare, faster than cable, with almost no underlying increase in innovation. Any guesses? It's absolutely education. It's $7 trillion worldwide. It's $1.6 trillion in the US. I believe Google's going to get into education, and they should get into education. To give you a sense of how outrageous this is, last night I teach a class called Brand in a Digital Age at NYU Stern. It's 325 kids. They pay $6,000 each for that one class. That's $1.95 million. I teach 12 nights. It's me in a room like this with a projector, or $163,000 a night. Granted, my agent takes a 97% commission, but right now, I am getting paid more than these soccer players in terms of my time. That is how outrageous education is. I'm also making more than any cast member of Star Wars with the exception of Harrison Ford. And by the way, I think I would be outstanding in Star Wars. And this is supposed to show me dressed up as Princess Leia. My tech team fucked up, and they will hear about it. I think Facebook is relationships. We have a need to love and be loved. The number 1 indicator of you making it to 100 years old, in reverse order. Number 3 is genetics. We like to think genetics play a bigger role in our life expectancy. They don't. You like to think that dye up and cast so you can abuse your body and think it doesn't matter. Actually, genetics play less of a role than you'd like to think in how long you're going to live. The number 2 indicator of whether you get to 100 is lifestyle. Don't be obese. Don't smoke. You screen out 60% of cardiac and cancer-related deaths. But the number 1 signal of your likelihood to get to 100 is simple. How many people in your life do you love? When your parents move in with you and you decide to take care of them, your life expectancy goes up 3 to 5 years. New mothers do not die. It's pretty basic. There's a camera watching you every moment of every day trying to figure out how much value you're adding to society. When you sweat, The camera thinks that you are building housing or hunting prey. When you take care of other people, you are the most important person in society. People who get loved the most reporting having more rewarding lives, but they don't live any longer. Facebook is filling this need to love at scale. I believe that there's going to be a correlation between the amount of time you spend on social media, specifically looking at the photographs of people you care about, and your life expectancy, and it's letting us do it at scale. Facebook is the most successful thing in the history of mankind. It's got a meaningful relationship with 2.1 billion people. There are 1.1 billion people who are self-identified Catholics. Facebook is more successful than God, Allah, democracy, communism, and the Kardashians. What's their path to $1 trillion? It's simple. It's monetization. They get 95% of their revenue from one thing, the Facebook platform. If they monetize these other amazing messaging apps, they could get there pretty easily. Right now, they have 1 billion people at $16, $16 billion in revenue, $300 billion market cap. They'll go to 2 billion daily active users. They could get to $50 a person if they monetize Messenger, Instagram, and WhatsApp. I think that puts them at $1 trillion. It's fun. At these conferences like this, your objective is to be inspiring and not piss off any people. The nice thing about being an academic is as long as you're pursuing the truth and you believe what you're saying and there's some data, you can piss off people, which suits my personality. So let's talk about the victims. Terry's colleague talked about basically the growth rates. Effectively, kids come to my office hours and want to talk about what industry they should go into. Ad tech, media is a great business as long as you're working for Facebook or Google. Everybody else is getting the shit kicked out of them. 5 years ago, magazines did 16 billion, Facebook did 3 billion. 5 years later, Facebook is 60% bigger business than the entire US magazine industry. You have, I'm not even going to talk about television, you guys do a better job of that. Essentially, advertising is a signal that your brand is weak. If you listen to the CEOs and earnings calls of L'Oreal and Estee Lauder, they're fastest growing brands, absolutely no media. Look at a company that increases its ad budget, and I'll show you a company that's failing in terms of product innovation. 90% of the growth, Terry stole my thunder here, so everybody fighting over the other 10%. This is what I would academically refer to as a shit show. We're in a lottery economy. I've raised $20 million from VCs. I'm sure a lot of you have. I've raised over $1 billion for startups over the course of my 25-year career. It used to be build a good business and everything will work out. Now the VCs are raise more money, become the leader, grow faster, raise more money. It's a lottery economy. Fewer exits, bigger exits, but more failures. So essentially, it's get rich or die trying, and I don't think that's a good thing. World belongs to Google and Facebook. Again, I'm not going to go over that. I think Australia is a decent metaphor for what's happening in the world. Effectively, what you've had there is 3 years ago, it's a $16 billion ecosystem in the media market. $4 billion went to outside technology companies or international technology companies, the Facebooks, the Criteos, the Googles, the Twitters, et cetera. So the rest were fighting over $12 billion, all the newspaper companies, traditional media. In 5 years, it's going to be $12 billion to the outsiders, and everybody else is going to be fighting over the $4 billion. So literally, the pie that everybody else is fighting over is plummeting. This is an industry that is in severe disruption. I think Amazon basically acquire stuff so you feel safer, can make it through winter. That's think about how much stuff we buy. It makes absolutely no sense. Most of us here have stuff in storage. We don't even remember what's in there, but for God forbid, we don't have it. We have way too much shit in our lives. Amazon is now a $300 billion market cap, bigger than Walmart. Hard to find enough retailers to add up. What's the path to $1 trillion? I have been famously wrong on this for the last 3 years. I think no pure play e-commerce company makes sense. I think they're all going out of business or they're going to open stores. The cost to acquire you online, and then the cost to get you that little black dress from a DC to a warehouse to a truck to a guy in a uniform to your house, and then have you decide you don't like it, go back to the man in the uniform, the truck, the DC, the warehouse, is economically unfeasible. The easiest, fantastic, most efficient warehouse in the world is something called a store. Walmart summarized this with their ad last year that said free delivery if you come into the store and pick it up. By the way, there are all these articles about how the store is dying. What total bullshit. It's the middle class that's dying. Going to a middle class neighborhood and the stores and every other business are dying. Going to Fifth Avenue, going to South Coast Plaza, going to the San Francisco Center, the stores are thriving. It's an indicator of the middle class dying. Stores are doing just fine. Amazon's going to get into bricks. They have to. I believe they should acquire Macy's and Carrefour. They would affect, Macy's could be justified the acquisition, just turn their 886 great stores into warehouses that are staffed with smart, young, attractive people. They have fantastic fulfillment. With Carrefour, they become the largest grocer overnight with another 2,000 points of distribution. They could pick up both these companies and incur about a 12% dilution to their stock with paying a 50% premium to their stock prices. Terry, get on it. The new Amazon, $300 billion, perfect omni-channel, half from clicks, half from bricks. I think that's $1 billion company. UPS, FedEx, and DHL, watch out. You've raised your prices 83% in the last 10 years with no underlying increase in innovation since package tracking 24 years ago. Bezos is supposedly getting into overnight to supplement episodic demand. Yeah, right. About $120 billion in market cap among DHL, UPS, and FedEx is about to be leaked to Amazon. Apple is about the second most powerful instinct. Every man's job in this room for the last 30 million years is one, to survive, and then two, to spread your seed to the four corners of the earth. This is a powerful instinct. The reason we're all paying a 98% premium, I pay $1,100 for a jacket that costs about $90 a cow skin, is because I want to say to the world, I'm younger, I'm cooler, sleep with me. There are only three things we do. This is the first slide in every class I teach, in the last slide. There's only three things we do in business. We appeal to the brain, basics like transportation, groceries, technology, hardware. These are rational decisions. You're competing against the brain. These are shitty businesses. The brain, regardless of AI, understands more nuance and more processing power than anything for a long time. When you're competing against the brain, you're going to have all the margins starched out and you're going to lose. CBG figured this out, decided that love was more important, started appealing to an irrational organ, and then said, if you give your kids this high caloric paste, you love them more than mothers who don't. Choosing moms, choose Jif. You're more elegant if you use this dishwashing liquid. They figured out a way to appeal to the heart. Greatest increase in investor value in a long time, from about the 1945 to 1985, because they understood they should appeal to the heart. Best business the last 30 years, hands down on a risk-adjusted basis, return to shareholders, is not technology, it's luxury. The people who go further down the torso. This is the best organ in the world to go after because it's the most irrational. If you haven't done something really stupid with your genitals, you haven't lived. This is what luxury taps into, the notion. This is a Panerai watch. It's an $11,000 watch that costs $1,600 to assemble. It's an amalgam of steel, glass, and rubber that's communicating to the world, I'm Italian, I'm young, and if I'm really honest with myself, I'm communicating to every woman in here that if you mate with me, your kids are more likely to survive than if you mate with someone wearing a Swatch watch. Men who buy Teslas are not environmentally conscious. You buy a Tesla on the East Coast, you're putting more carbon into the air because the electricity fueling it came from a coal-fired plant. You're saying to the world, please sleep with me, you're in the midst of a huge midlife crisis. It's okay to make fun of men. That's fine. You can say anything politically incorrect about men, but I'm going to say something politically incorrect about women. Women's job has been number one, to survive. Number two is to solicit as many inbound offers from the strongest, smartest, and fastest seeds so they can put up their much finer filter and pick the best mate. This is the basis of evolutionary progress, and they will continue to wear $600 ergonomically impossible shoes. Estee Lauder, larger market cap than WPP. Richemont, the company that makes Alhambra necklaces, Cartier, and Panerai, has a larger market cap now than Deutsche Telekom. This is the best business in the world. Apple's the first company to migrate successfully down the torso. It used to be a better computer. They realized they couldn't win with a Wintel platform. It was underpriced and overpriced and underpowered. They moved to the heart, started getting rid of all the hardware and all the rational, and start saying, think different, be like Jackie Robinson or Jim Henson. And the transition is complete. They've now moved to the genitals. Your iOS is now the ultimate signal of wealth, education, and likelihood of a random sexual experience. This has become the new operating system, the new signal, the new luxury brand. They've made the full transition to luxury. Apple is quote-unquote failing. Let's talk about their failing. They grew $51 billion last year. They added every company on the right side of the screen to their top line. This is what they added. That is the total size of those businesses. How did they get to $1 trillion? It's a strange business. They actually have to articulate a mission. It's the best brand in the world, but they haven't articulated a distilled mission that the investment community can understand. As a result, we evaluate Apple in the context of every single product release. Facebook, super compelling distilled mission. Connecting the world, I get it, it's compelling, I'm going to buy their stock. Amazon, world's biggest store, I get it, I'm going to buy their stock, and they've been awarded the lowest cost of capital in the world. Google, organizing the Earth's information, I love that, I'm going to buy their stock. What's Apple's mission? I mean, you kind of feel it, but you don't really know it. As a result, we evaluate the most recent iPhone and we take their stock down. And people say they're too dependent on the iPhone. Apple is no more dependent on the iPhone than Google is on search or Facebook is on their core platform. It's ridiculous. If they just articulate a vision that says, this is what we're trying to move against, this is how we're doing against it, and they get to an EBITDA that is just half the average of the other horsemen, boom, they're at $1 trillion. They're paying a lack of vision tax right now. Who are the victims? Let's group them into retail. You have $69 billion in growth last year. It's almost impossible to find companies that have grown $69 billion. I work with Nike. They did $3 billion in growth last year. Best year in history for them. They grew 3. You have to go to automobile companies before you even start to get to the growth these companies. Amazon, 51% of all online growth, 24% of all online retail. They've changed the game. I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan, and I think Game of Thrones will go down as iconic because what do? They build up these protagonists you get emotionally involved in, and then they kill them. Imagine if Goldfinger had let the laser keep going in James Bond. Amazon has redefined their Game of Thrones moment is they've traded profits for vision and growth. They've said profits are heroin to investors. Investors, once they get a little taste of heroin, they're like, wow, I really like this shit. Oh my God, that's nice. Hey, CEO, you have a vision for the company. You want to compete. You want to reinvest. Wow, I like that, but don't fuck with my heroin. I really like to roll on heroin. No, don't take that away. So Walmart made the mistake of giving their investors a lot of heroin. Amazon can't, it's not that Amazon can't be profitable, they've just figured out it's stupid to be profitable. As long as investors will reward you for vision and growth, take every incremental gross margin dollar and pile it back into the company. And no company can compete with them because everybody else has an investor base that wants their crank. Walmart announces they're responding to Amazon and going to make a huge incremental investment in technology to compete with Amazon, which, by the way, is absolutely the correct move. And the next morning, within the 6 minutes of opening trading bell, they shed the market value of Macy's. Mickey Drexler summarized it. How do you compete with a company that doesn't need nor want to be profitable? Who owns the future? What is the product that defines our age? The smartphone, 92% of all profits go to Apple, 15% go to Samsung. That doesn't make any sense, but it does. The other 7% is being fought over by the other companies in terms of losses. Apple sold more desktops last year. Let's talk about their failure, the Apple Watch. More smartwatches now shipped than are being shipped out of Switzerland. And 2/3 of those smartwatches now come from one player, Apple. Look at the stock prices of every smartwatch and watch company since the Apple Watch was announced. Ask the watch industry if they think the smartwatch or if they think the Apple Watch has been a failure. Literally overnight, the Apple Watch has become the biggest player in the watch industry, and it is sucking the oxygen out of the room for the entire watch business. Real quick on migration, we track data off of LinkedIn to figure out net retention numbers. And if you look at these amazing icons of yesterday in terms of how many people they're losing to Amazon, Facebook, and Google, it illuminates the invisible hand of the economy. P&G's lost 360 people to Amazon. Unilever's lost 194 people to Google. Say, well, whatever. People trade players all the time. So the obvious next question is, well, how many of these people have gone back to these firms? So hold on. This is the next slide. This is the migration back from these amazing companies, right, from Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google. How many people have gone from those 3 firms to these companies? Let's talk about the big 4. What's the net retention there? Facebook actually has the highest net retention. And I think this is a number we track for all of our member brands. What is your net retention relative to your competitive set? There is another, though, a company that's getting more people. 1 out of 5 people at Uber now come from one of these 4. There's another firm, though, that actually is the giant HR recruiting engine of the entire technology industry, gets great people, trains them for 2 to 5 years, and then they leave and go to one of these 5 firms. Anyone want to guess who that is? You statues, anybody? Yahoo. I got in a ton of trouble for saying that Marissa Mayer was the most overpaid CEO in the history of technology. I was wrong. She's the most underpaid recruiter in the history of technology. I'm going to wrap up here. As you can tell, I suffer from anger and depression, and I tend to see the world as half empty, but I do think it's important to acknowledge that there's some incredibly wonderful things taking place because of technology, specifically life expectancy, literacy both up, homicide, poverty down. If you have a child right now, he or she is supposed to live to be 100. And the likelihood he or she will die at the hands of another human has never been lower, so arguably that's the greatest accomplishment in history. Some very meaningful things taking place in technology, more environmentally sound products. It's never been a better time to be born in the right place, the right time with the right skills. And it's important we have income inequality to a certain extent because it's motivating. I love this screenshot I took from Uber that said, your driver is hearing impaired, please put in the destination. There's a lot of fantastic things. The problem is, if you look at it a little bit more half empty, this is a picture taken by Doris Novikov, who I've been running around the world with this picture, and she contacted me and said, who are you? I want to come meet with you. I'm meeting with her actually in 2 days. She's a photographer for the New York Times. This is a great picture of a couple in Maine who were diagnosed tragically and ironically with cancer at exactly the same time. So, yeah, we have the greatest concentration of IQ in history. Like, it wasn't Werner von Waubel's work on the V2. It wasn't the Alamo Project. It wasn't the doctors who came together for the AIDS cocktail. These 4 firms have aggregated more talent, more capital, more motivation, platforms that can accomplish things we never dreamed of. And why are we bringing all these people together? What is the greatest source of intellect, humanity, culture, and brand? What is the aggregate collective goal? To sell another fucking Nissan. My name is Scott Galloway. I teach at NYU and work for L2, and I appreciate your time.